The Persians first confronted the Spartans at the Battle of Thermopylae, a narrow mountain pass that stood in the way of the Persians accessing any point south. It was the year 480 BCE, and the Achaemenid Persian Empire was led by King Xerxes I. Xerxes was bringing a huge army and a huge fleet toward Greece, and the Greek city-states knew they had to work together or be crushed one by one. On the Greek side, an alliance of city-states formed, and Sparta was the most famous land power among them. Sparta's king, Leonidas I, became the leader of a small force sent to block the Persians in a place where size would not matter as much. Thermopylae was not a big open field. It was a tight, narrow pass squeezed between mountains and the sea, like a hallway where only a few people can walk side by side. If the Greeks could hold that hallway, the Persians could not easily march south into Greece. You can imagine the air there, salty sea wind from one side, rocky mountain air from the other, and the sound of waves hitting the shore not far away. The pass was so narrow that the clanking armor and heavy footsteps would echo between stone walls. In a place like that, a small group of trained fighters could stand shoulder to shoulder and block many more enemies. In this now legendary battle, 300 Spartans, led by their king Leonidas I, successfully defended the pass for 2 days before being betrayed by a local who showed a roundabout route to the Persians. Leonidas was famous, but the Greek force was not only Spartans. The total Greek number at Thermopylae is often described as around 7,000 at the beginning. The Spartans were the most talked about because they were elite soldiers with strict training, but other Greeks came too. In the tight pass, the Greeks fought as hoplites, heavy infantry soldiers carrying big shields and long spears. When they stood together in formation, it looked like a wall made of bronze and wood. "Hold the line," Leonidas might have said in a calm voice, because calm courage was part of Spartan pride. The Persians attacked with a far larger army. Many estimates say over 100,000. Even if you don't know the exact number, the important idea is this. The Persians had so many soldiers that it looked like a moving sea of people, and the Greeks looked like a small knot of fighters standing in one narrow doorway. The first day was fierce. The Persians tried to push through, but the narrowness of Thermopylae stopped them from using their full numbers at once. Greek shields pressed together, spears thrust forward. The sound would have been loud, metal striking metal, people shouting, feet slipping on dirt and stone, and the groans of the wounded. Meanwhile, there was another part of the plan happening on the water. Before Thermopylae, the Greeks had first decided to hold another narrow place called the Vale of Tempe between Macedonia and Thessaly. But they realized the Persians could get around it, so they abandoned that plan. "We can't hold a place that can be easily bypassed," the Greek leaders would have understood. So they chose Thermopylae on land and Artemisium at sea. At Thermopylae, the Greeks occupied the narrow pass with about 6,000 or 7,000 hoplites. At Artemisium, in northern Euboea, the Greeks stationed 271 triremes, fast warships with 3 rows of oars on each side. When many oars hit the water at the same time, it sounded like a steady drumbeat of splashes. These two positions were linked by communication between Spartan commanders, King Leonidas at Thermopylae and Eurybates at Artemisium. Their goal was to halt the Persians and hurt them enough to slow the invasion. Xerxes advanced slowly. He did not split his army into separate columns, and his fleet suffered heavy losses in a storm while escorting supply ships along the coast. Imagine sailors gripping wet ropes, ships rocking, wind screaming, and darkness full of spray. The sea can be as dangerous as any enemy. It was already August when Xerxes began the main operations, and the fighting would stretch over 3 days. On the first day, Xerxes sent a detachment of 200 ships unseen by the Greeks to sail around Euboea and close the narrows of the Euripus Strait. This was a sneaky plan. If those 200 ships could sail around and block a narrow strait, they could trap the Greek fleet or cut off Greek movement. It was like trying to lock a door behind someone. At the same time, Xerxes attacked Thermopylae with his best infantry. The Greeks inflicted heavy casualties. In kid-friendly terms, the Greeks hurt the Persian army badly because the Persians could not push through that narrow hallway easily. In the afternoon, the Greek fleet learned about the Persian detachment from a deserter, someone who left one side and told the other what was happening. The Greek fleet then engaged the main Persian fleet with some success. Picture the sea near Artemisium, rows of ships, wooden hulls, sails, and oars, men shouting orders, water churning white around the oars, ships turning sharply, trying to ram or block. The air smelled of salt, sweat, and wet wood. The Greeks planned to sail south that night and destroy the detachment the next day, but a tremendous storm kept the Greeks at Artemisium and wrecked the 200 Persian ships off southern Euboea. It is a powerful reminder that nature can change history. The storm didn't care which side was stronger. It smashed the Persian ships as they struggled along the coast. Waves slammed them into rocks, masts cracked, men were thrown into dark water. The Greek sailors, stuck where they were, would have heard wind roaring and seen lightning flashes, knowing ships could be dying out there. On the second day, news of the Persian disaster was brought up by a reinforcing squadron of 53 Athenian ships. The Athenians were a major sea power. Their arrival meant extra ships and extra confidence for the Greeks. "More friends are here," a sailor might have whispered, relieved. Xerxes attacked again at Thermopylae with no success. The Greeks also sank some Cilician vessels off Artemisium. So on land, the Greek line still held. On sea, the Greeks were fighting hard too, damaging Persian ships and keeping the sea battle from becoming an easy Persian win. But then came the betrayal that changed everything. A Greek traitor, Ephialtes, offered to guide the Persians along a mountain path and turn the position at Thermopylae. This mountain path meant the Persians could go around the narrow pass and come down behind the Greeks, like sneaking through a back door. Ephialtes did not just give directions, he offered the Persians a way to defeat the entire Greek plan at Thermopylae. The Immortals, an elite group of Persian infantry, were entrusted to him. The word immortals makes them sound magical, but they were elite because they were trained, well-armed, and important to Persian power. If one died, another replaced him, so their unit always stayed strong, which helped build their fearsome reputation. At dawn on the third day, they began to descend toward the plain behind the Greek position. Dawn is when the sky turns pale and the world feels cold and quiet before the day begins. The Immortals would have moved carefully on rocky paths, breath visible in cool air, weapons ready, listening for any sign they were discovered too soon. When Leonidas learned what was happening, he made a hard choice. Leonidas retained the troops of Sparta, Thespia, and Thebes, and sent the remainder south. This meant he sent many Greek allies away to survive and continue the war later. Go, he might have said simply, because the most important thing was that Greece still had soldiers left to fight. He then advanced. He and his soldiers fought to the death, except the Thebans who surrendered. This part became famous as the last stand. Leonidas and his men knew they were surrounded. Still, they fought. The sound at Thermopylae on that final day would have been terrible. Shouting, crying, the crash of shields, and the steady pressure of too many enemies. Meanwhile, the Persian fleet attacked at noon. So even as the final land fight happened, the sea battle continued. Both sides suffered heavy losses. The Greeks realized they could succeed only in narrower waters. That's an important idea. The Greek ships were built and used in a way that worked best when the enemy couldn't spread out. In narrow water, big numbers become less useful. That evening, when the fall of Thermopylae was known, the Greek fleet withdrew down the Euboean Channel and took station in the narrow straits of Salamis. When the Greeks heard Thermopylae had fallen, they knew the Persians could now march further south. The sea became even more important. At Salamis, the water was narrow again, like a water hallway, perfect for the Greek style of fighting at sea. In September, Xerxes, joined by many Greeks north of Attica, burned Athens. This is a hard moment. Athens was a major Greek city, but the city was almost deserted. The Athenians, following the advice of Themistocles, had entrusted themselves to the wooden wall of their ships in line with a Delphic oracle. A Delphic oracle was a famous religious message from Delphi. The message said that wooden walls would save Athens. Themistocles made an unusual interpretation. He believed the wooden walls meant ships, not wooden fences around the city. So he ordered a full evacuation of the city in advance of the Persian attack. People left their homes, carrying what they could. You can imagine quiet streets, empty houses, and the sound of footsteps and wheels as families moved toward the shore.
Children clutched hands. Parents looked back at buildings they loved, not knowing what would happen. Themistocles built a massive fleet and used it to send the city's inhabitants to safety. He took a gamble. "Trust the ships," he might have told them. "The water will be our wall." His gamble proved successful in the sense that the people were mostly gone when the Persians arrived.
The Persians captured and burned a mostly empty city. Smoke rose, flames crackled, the smell of burning wood drifted over the ruins. The Persians had taken Athens, but they had not captured the Athenian people or destroyed the Athenian fleet, which mattered more for what would happen next. The Greek Congress decided to fortify the isthmus and keep the fleet forward at Salamis. An isthmus is a narrow strip of land connecting larger land areas. Fortifying it meant building defenses, making it harder for Persians to push through. But this decision caused dissension among the ship captains. Many wanted to retire to the Argolic Gulf. This was disagreement and arguing. Some leaders felt safer pulling back. Others felt they had to fight in the narrow straits at Salamis. In a tense war meeting, voices would rise. "We should fall back," one might insist. "No," another might answer. "We must fight here." Themistocles clinched the matter by informing Xerxes of their desire. This is a surprising move. Themistocles told Xerxes what many Greek captains wanted, to retreat. Xerxes saw the campaigning season nearing its end and wanted a quick, final win. So Xerxes sent 200 ships that night to cut the Greek line of retreat and posted the main fleet of 1,207 ships off the eastern exit of the Straits of Salamis. It was like Xerxes tried to close a trap, block the Greeks from escaping, and force them to fight. During the night, the Greeks learned of his positions and intentions. So the Greeks now knew that if they tried to retreat, they would be attacked and possibly destroyed. "He's trying to trap us," someone would have realized. At dawn, they moved northward, feigning a retreat, drew the main Persian fleet into the strait, and then returned to engage at close quarters. Feigning a retreat means pretending to run away. The Greeks acted like they were leaving. The Persians followed into the narrow water. Then the Greeks turned back to fight where the Persians were crowded and confused. A detachment under the Corinthian Adamantus sailed to meet the 200 Persian ships. Meanwhile, the 310 remaining Greek ships, stoutly built for ramming, had room to maneuver against the congested stream of Persian ships. Greek ships were built strong for ramming, crashing into enemy ships with force. Persian ships were designed for boarding tactics, which means getting close and having soldiers climb onto enemy ships to fight hand-to-hand. But in the tight straits, Persian ships became less handy under oar and fell foul of one another. In kid-friendly terms, there were too many Persian ships packed into a small space. They bumped each other, got in each other's way, and couldn't move well. The result was a complete triumph for Greek seamanship. Seamanship is skill at sea, knowing how to steer, how to time attacks, how to move in waves, and how to fight with ships. Greek sailors used the narrow water like a tool. The Persians fled in confusion. Soon afterward, their fleet, still superior in numbers but not in morale, set sail for Asia. Morale means spirit and confidence. Even if they still had many ships, they did not feel strong inside anymore. Fear and doubt can ruin an army or a fleet. That winter, while Xerxes departed to Asia, a large army wintered in Thessaly under the command of Mardonius. So Xerxes left, but the war did not end. Mardonius stayed with a big Persian army. Wintering means spending the winter in a place, waiting for the fighting season to return. With skillful diplomacy, Mardonius drew the Greeks forward in the summer of 479 BCE to the northern foothills of Mount Cithaeron near Plataea. Diplomacy means using talks, deals, and plans, not just swords, to shape what happens. Mardonius managed to pull the Greeks into a place where supply problems became serious. Supply problems forced the Greek army of 110,000 soldiers to withdraw during the night. Feeding and watering a huge army is hard. Soldiers need grain, meat, water, and equipment. If supplies are not steady, even brave armies struggle.
The withdrawal was disorderly, and dawn found the army scattered. That means it was not a neat, organized retreat. Different groups ended up in different places. Some might have been confused in the darkness. Officers might have called out orders. Soldiers might have stumbled across rough ground trying to find the right path. Mardonius at once attacked a group of 11,500 Spartan and Tegean hoplites who had halted on hilly ground. These hoplites had stopped on hills, which can be a good defensive position. Their commander was Pausanias. Pausanias, undismayed by the swarms of Persian infantry, led his fighters downhill in close formation, charged at the double, and overwhelmed the enemy. "Stay together," Pausanias might have shouted. Charging at the double means running fast. The hoplites moved downhill in tight formation, using their shields and spears as a unit. The Persians attacked in large numbers, but the disciplined Greek formation hit hard. Overwhelmed means the Persian group could not hold up against the strong Greek attack. When the Athenians came up after defeating the Thebans, the Greeks stormed the camp and the survivors of the Persian army fled. Storming the camp means rushing into the enemy camp and taking it by force. After that, the Persians who were left alive ran away. Meanwhile, the Greek fleet had passed to the offensive at Mycale on the Asian coast opposite Samos. So, while the land victory happened near Plataea, the sea forces moved to attack at Mycale. The Persians refused battle, beached their ships, and joined a large supporting army. Beaching ships means pulling them up on shore so they can't be sunk in water easily and so soldiers can defend them from land. But the Spartan king Leotychides landed his troops farther north and attacked with complete success. The Greek attack worked. The victories of Plataea and Mycale ended the Persian invasion. That means the big attempt by Persia to invade Greece was finally stopped, not by one battle alone, but by a chain of battles and smart choices. The Greek triumph was due to Spartan leadership, Athenian loyalty, and Greek fighting power. Spartan leadership mattered on land, Athenian loyalty and strength mattered especially at sea, and Greek fighting power, how well they could fight, stand firm, and cooperate, made a huge difference. However, the Spartans had no desire to campaign in Asia, whereas the Athenians were ready to deploy their fleet in support of the Ionians. This difference in goals mattered next. The Spartans were more focused on defending Greece. The Athenians were more willing to take the fight outward, especially using ships. Hence arose the Delian League, formed by Athens as executive leader and by many Greek states on the islands and Asian coast to defend Greek liberty and exact retribution from Persia. The Delian League was like a team alliance, and Athens took the lead. Many Greek states joined, especially those near the sea who feared Persian return. A series of successful operations culminated about 467 BCE in victory at the Eurymedon River in Pamphylia, where an allied force of 300 ships under Cimon defeated a Persian army and navy. This shows the war's story didn't stop at Thermopylae or Salamis. Greeks continued to fight Persia in other places, and leaders like Cimon led fleets in big operations. In 460, the Athenians and their allies supported Egypt in a successful revolt, but the Persian army returned to the attack. At first, Egypt's revolt succeeded, but then Persia came back with force. Egypt made a separate peace, and the Greeks, overconfident in their sea power, were trapped on the Nile and annihilated in 454. Overconfident means too sure of yourself. Trapped on the Nile means the Greeks got stuck in a place where escape was hard. Annihilated means they were destroyed. By this time, the Athenians were at war with Sparta, but a truce on the Greek mainland enabled them to launch successful attacks on Cyprus in 450 to 449 BCE. So, now Greece had trouble inside Greece too. Athens and Sparta fought each other, but there was also a truce that allowed Athens to send attacks elsewhere. In 449 BCE, the Peace of Calais finally ended the hostilities between Athens and its allies and Persia. In exchange for peace, Artaxerxes I of Persia recognized the liberty of Greek states in Europe and Asia and vowed to keep the Persian fleet out of the Aegean Sea. So, after years of fighting, there was an agreement. Persia accepted that Greek states would be free, and Persia promised to not send its fleet into the Aegean Sea. Looking back over this whole story, from Thermopylae to Artemisium, from Salamis to Plataea, and from Mycale to later battles and peace, it is remembered for courage against overwhelming odds, for smart planning, for teamwork, and also for human choices that changed everything. Thermopylae is especially remembered because Leonidas and the 300 Spartans made a legendary last stand. But it is also important to remember that other Greek city-states fought there too, and that Thermopylae was part of a larger plan involving land and sea. It is also remembered because betrayal mattered. Ephialtes showed the Persians the path, and that turned the battle. Even brave fighters can be defeated if the enemy finds a way around their strongest point. And it is remembered because the Greeks, even after losing at Thermopylae, did not give up. They used the time bought by that battle to prepare, to move people to safety, and to fight on the sea where they had advantages. "Not today," a Greek sailor might have said as he gripped an oar at Salamis. "We fight here." And in the narrow straits, Greek seamanship won a complete triumph. Finally, the victories of Plataea and Mycale